less about the crime. No one looks behind the curtain, and no one questions why. The only time we got is right about now. I cross my heart, I take the vow, I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end.
Good evening, welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. I'm with you now, I'm with you to the end. And if we follow that crop circle in England, the end was supposed to be on August the 4th, like soon, at 1940 something hours or whatever, as the northern exposure clock worked. So maybe that's the end. We don't know for sure exactly. We just have to take it on faith that we reveal the secrets. We postpone the end a little longer, a little longer, a little further, a little further, a little further. Some people are saying the end of the economy is going to be coming very, very quickly, and I can't disagree with that. As we get wrapped up in the bread and circuses of the Olympics, although they don't give you too much bread, but they do put on a good circus, a good pagan circus, a good ritualistic, almost like sacrifice of anything and everything you can ever imagine from the demon forces. We'll get into that and take it apart and show you from a chap who put together a really good synopsis of the opening ceremonies. But that's why a show like this is important, because nobody else is going to tell you. You're not going to get this on mainstream news. They'll tell you about something after it's over. Like they had a big power failure in India, and 600 million people are out of power because half the country's in the dark. And then, as my webmaster coined, who are you going to call for tech support? Everybody's in the dark. So I can imagine the tech support for the planet Earth is pretty much down the drain, because so much of it has been contracted out to India. And it's just something that we've harped on many, many times on this show. You have to be prepared. You got to look after yourself. Not only do you have to be the bank of yourself, you got to be the food store of yourself, the spare parts repository of yourself, and virtually everything else for yourself. Because if you're not prepared in your neighborhood, your community, your church, or whatever you belong to, you could be facing a Waterloo like this. This hydro we have is just basically a large umbilical cord hanging by a thread, and it can come apart at any time for very long periods of time. And you know, we wouldn't be here at this show, that's for sure, if that umbilical cord broke. Just everything's going to turn around. So you always have to have a backup system that doesn't rely on this frangible technology. It's all powered by electricity. That's why the cashless society is a fool's errand. When all the power goes out, there's no cash, there's no banks, there's no money. Everything just goes back to the Stone Age. So you have to have something cash in hand to be able to do business or deal with things. You have to have some bit of food or this or that. India is a country that's a survivor. They've been around a long time before many other nations, so I'm pretty sure they'll pull through, but it's going to be a very, very difficult time, to say the least, because many, many people need and rely on this technology. So one of the Waterloos that are coming on the market is the one George Soros recommended many months ago. We said in June that the global economy has about 3 months to live. Time's running out. 3 months went by very, very quickly. So Agent 99 came up with this little article that's just, puts the wooden stake in the heart here. Collapse of financial system will come in August, maybe September. Market watchers. So market watchers are saying the clock atop the Eurozone time bomb will finally run to zero in very short order. The world economy has entered a final countdown with 3 months left. Pencil in collapse August or September, from those words of the illustrious George Soros and many other people. Jim Reed, a strategist at Deutsche Bank, says it feels like Europe has proved us right. I wish we could prove them wrong, but unfortunately the power of compounding interest and this monstrous debt that we are drowning under just will tow the day one day. If this cycle is of completely average length as seen in the last 158 years of 33-year cycles, then the next recession should start by the end of August. Employment data is looking pear-shaped in April. 2012 in economic terms is a deja vu of 2011. And we were lucky we didn't go over the edge in 2011. Things will turn very sour quickly sometime in August or September. Standard & Poor's downgrade of the U.S. Sovereign credit rating happened in August of 2011. European Bank acknowledged just how badly the situation was going in Europe. The Fed is beginning its Operation Twist. The Fed's rate-setting body on August 1st. Greece by institutions providing bailout monies to countries also in August. September, the release of results of auditors currently combing through the Spanish banking system. I imagine they have to comb pretty deep to come up with anything, possibly being catalysts to the next event. Historically, August is a good month for these collapses, according to Simon Johnson, MIT economist. He said that, of course, a lot of people are on holidays in August, and I guess it's far more important to be on holidays to save the global economy. We don't have holidays here at Conspiracy Cafe. We're working at this practically 24/7 if it was humanly possible or we were able. So it's just an amazing amount of work that goes into this. So see here our graph here of bank crises. You can see August and September are really up there. And then of course we get a little respite in October for some reason, with November and December coming along and a bit of January. So when are we going to face this Waterloo? Well, that's just up in the air. Bill McBride, a calculated risk. Housing will cross a significant milestone in the late summer. Year-on-year Case-Shiller index of prices turning positive for the first time in more than 6 years. So I guess we won't bore you with the Case-Shiller graph. It's a cute graph. There it is. We can just look at it for those with their fortunes in economics, just to say we have a little bit of a rebound there. So basically, we're heading for this economic Waterloo. We've been heading for it for some time, and it's just going to come on us just a whole lot harder and a whole lot faster. And basically the vast majority of people are just not prepared to even begin to understand how tenuous these threads of this economy are and how hard they are going to fall when the time comes. Ron Paul, his Audit the Fed bill, did advance a little bit. That would be an amazing thing to see, that they could actually audit it, but by the time they do audit it, it'll be pretty much a fait accompli that things have crashed, and there'll be no way that anyone could resist looking at or auditing some of these bills in the House to check this out. One of the main reasons we have this major mess, part of it is this globalization process, this free trade process, linking everything together, everybody sleeping in the same bed. And then when one rolls over, everybody feels it. This is just absolutely insane. Some scientists did put together a very interesting paper. 3 scientists in Switzerland from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, chaps by the name of Vitali, Glattfelder, and Battiston. They were published in the New Scientist magazine. They used an armada of supercomputers, the Orbis 2007 database of 37 million corporations and individual investors worldwide. And what they found in their research paper was, wrong button, was this little monkey. So this is how everything is all connected to everything else. So we see this little colossus here in the middle, and that everything is interlinked. So when you destroy or damage the middle, it takes down all the periphery. Not that that's rocket science or anything like that, but they did a nice paper on that. And oh well, this is a big article. Let me get here. This is basically the creme de la creme of all these things. We have Prudential Financial, Morgan Stanley, Citigroup, Bank of America Corporation, State Street Corporation, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, T. Rowe Price, UBS AG, Barclays PLC, AXA, Deutsche Bank AG, Credit Suisse, Commerce Bank AG, and Franklin Resources, all part of this giant monstrosity in the middle. And basically with them all being linked and connected together, when they fail, they'll all fail together and everything will go down, except for maybe a few little pieces that are on the periphery, like maybe people who listen to Conspiracy Cafe, people who have an open mind, people who think for themselves, people who saw the ship sinking many long years in advance and have constantly and cautiously taken precautions with their money and their investments not to be part of this system of insanity. Because basically what it is, aside from being the giant Ponzi scheme and just total insanity, it's just a greed factory. These types of things can't prosper. If there's going to be good and evil on the planet Earth, good must ultimately prosper over evil in the long term. So all these things that are based on lies, deceits, and frauds are just like a watered-down foundation on a building. Sooner or later, they will collapse. And when they collapse, of course, you don't want to be taken down with them. One article that goes with this is oil prices could be rigged by traders, warns the G20 report. So this isn't coming from some conspiracy website. Now even the G20 is saying that they believe, according to the International Organization of Securities Commissions, that trillions of dollars in securities and contracts based on oil and gasoline prices could be rigged just the same as Barclays rigged their LIBOR rate. And that's not a surprise to people who are open to alternative news, alternative views, and alternative suggestions, because we know that's all they can do is lie. The whole system is based on a lie from top to bottom. They couldn't tell the truth to save their lives. And because of these inefficiencies and inaccuracies, the whole thing will implode and fall upon itself. And to some degree, for those who have profited most from this deception, they really deserve what they're going to get, because they've deprived the working poor, the non-working poor, and virtually everyone else. They've just cast them adrift as marginalized human beings, which is not a proper way to run the planet in any way, shape, or form. There was a little gold discovery. Crusaders' pot from their last stand was found. Pot of gold denals were buried by Crusaders as enemy forces closed in. 100 coins worth up to $5,000 each. They suspect that this little treasure trove was buried in 1265 by the Christian soldiers of the Order of the Knights Hospitalier, annihilated April 1st, 1265. So the coins were minted in Tripoli and Alexandria. And that's why I can say, without a word of a lie or whatever, that's why we have to look at precious metals as being a major, major part of your lifeboat. So here, this group, the Knights, bury this treasure. The mints are gone. The people who made them are gone. They're buried in time. You have money from a long-lost civilization being discovered and still having intrinsic value today. If we had any other paper money or something from a long-gone civilization that doesn't exist, you wouldn't find it having any value in the modern era, the modern day. This is something real, tangible, and precious that you can hold in your hand. So that's why, to some degree, that has to be part of what you have to have. And part of the other things you have to have, of course, are the majority things you need: food, medicine, water, clean water. So to have water purifiers, water filters, a reasonable supply of food lying around just in case the power does go out. Because part of the power going out thing is, it's not that, you're some kind of right-wing survivalist or anything like that, but you probably got a lot of stuff in your freezer and it's all going to spoil. In the wintertime it's okay, but you're going to spoil in the wintertime because you'll freeze. But you can put your food outside and keep it frozen still. But in the summertime, all this is going to spoil in very short order in a long-term power failure. And that's going to severely reduce food that you had in storage. So to have tangible food in some kind of survivable container that can survive cold and or heat for an extended period of time and still be fresh for you to eat is very, very important. It's life-saving material. That's your lifeboat. You got to have one. To be able, if you're able to forage for food, if you're a good hunter or fisher person, or you're good with the green thumb and you can keep your garden growing on a regular basis, have a greenhouse, or raise small animals, nobody's going to laugh at you when you're starving. Believe me. You got the only generator in town and all the power's gone out. Don't be surprised there's 100,000 people at your door saying, please. Just common sense. Generally, nobody prepares, and they look at the ones who do with humor until it happens, and then with a lot of begging, groveling, and pleading. Another old thing was found was an ancient mosaic depicting the fiery Bible story. A glittering mosaic of colored stones once decorated an ancient synagogue floor with the scenes of biblical hero Samson getting revenge on the Philistines. The newly excavated discovery in the village of Hukkok. Unusual scene: Samson trying torches to fox's tails in order to burn his enemies' crops. Part of the synagogue dating back to 400 to 500 AD. An event described in the book of Judges in both Christian and Hebrew Bibles. expressed for the light of day for the first time in 1,500 years. That's another thing that's very valuable too, that can be buried away as knowledge, truths, so that through some future generation, in spite of many, many attempts maybe to suppress the truth, the words can go on eons into the future and be regarded by people in a new light of day. And that's something, you know, God coded in our DNA, where it's language. There's a God code. So we can't destroy the code because we destroy ourselves. Maybe the New World Order would love to destroy our DNA and alter the code, but it's been there since the dawn of time, and it'll be there till the end of time. And there's nothing they can do about it. And they probably don't even know what it says, because no one has been able to develop it far enough. The elite rich, they've been hiding their money in tax havens. The super rich are hiding at least $21 trillion offshore. It's the equivalent to the size of the US and Japanese economies combined. In this report, Price of Offshore Revisited by James Henry, he said it could even go to a scale of $32 trillion and such. So this capital flight, taking money out of the system and putting it into whatever. Here we see most assets offshore are UBS, Credit Suisse, and Goldman Sachs. Less than 100,000 people worldwide own about 9.8 trillion of the wealth offshore. Of course, other banks will participate in this monstrosity as well. So this money is tax sheltered, of course, so they get after us. They say, well, you got to pay your taxes, and you got to be a cog in the wheel, and all the big people who own the wheel just don't participate. So that puts the burden on us. And then they take all kinds of carefree and desperate investment strategies or risks. When it blows up in their face, they just point the finger at John Q. Public and say, you pay. You're the taxpayer. You're the lender of last resort. You pay for the mistakes. You pay for the mess. Well, unfortunately, I don't think that's good enough. They believe in all this freedom of free enterprise and all that. Well, part of the freedom of free enterprise is when you screw up, you wear it. You don't pass it on to somebody else. But in a free and independent media, maybe things like that would be discussed. Not too much gets discussed with these people, although I have seen, from looking at some of the news lately, that some of the things we brought up on some of our shows have made it into mainstream media. So one of the things we teased in our blog was that, we have a gun problem here in Toronto. We really have a drug problem. The gun problem is a symptom of the drug problem, and part of the gun problem is good people don't have guns, only bad people have guns, because these one world order socialists or whatever just keep playing, the only people they can beat are people that lawfully own firearms and who are no threat to the equation. People have to go through police security clearances and are probably, as a group, the most law-abiding group of citizens in the country, period, especially those who, have, the more restricted or prohibited firearms, have, probably per capita a better record than any other group, period, possibly including the police. But definitely against everybody else down the scale, including politicians. But the head of the Ontario Housing Authority was saying we should arm our police. We have our own police force, and they've got to work in a place that has a homicide rate. They have to work in a place where drug dealers can come in with guns and blow each other away, but the people who primarily police this property don't have firearms. So that's liberal logic of some sort that, I've never hit myself in the head long enough with a ball-peen hammer. Of course, it takes a better person to some degree. Like, I don't really like to get into arrest situations when you have a loaded firearm on your belt. But, some of the alternatives for the special constabularies are, to have something locked in your car to use as you need it, as opposed to not, but it is something to be taken into account. I know we carried guns in the armored car industry, and we had a whole raft of people armed and moving about town, and many crimes were diverted because of the presence of armed personnel, even trained to the lowly standard that we were in the armored car industry. I remember one competitor company used to hang out at a gas station in a central portion of Toronto, near the 401 highway, the main highway cutting through town. And, you know, they bought gas there as well, but there would always be a propensity of crews from this company, their service crews who go around in unmarked cars. They're in uniform and they're armed, but they just frequently would have 2, 3, or 4 crews hanging out at this gas station. And then it changed hands and it got a new owner. And the new owner kicked them off the property. He didn't like them hanging around. You know, those evil guns. I don't want them around me. Well, the idiot got held up like 3 times. You got free security. You give them half the price of stuff in the store. They buy gas there anyway, so they're regular customers. I'd set a little TV set up in the window so they could watch their favorite sports games when they got nothing to do or something like that. And, you know, anything happens to me, I got 6, 8 armed men in the parking lot. And maybe a couple women sprinkled in for good measure. That can settle the claim right on the spot. No cost to me. You know, how do you spell fool? You know, places I used to hang out, remember one was a bookstore, Chapter's bookstore with a nice coffee shop or something like that. I worked in the northern part of the province at the time. And, you know, that was just a convenient place close to the highway where my partner and I could hang out. They had like a nice fireplace. It was wintertime and cold, and we could just sit there, read books, and have coffee until we got a call. And then it was browsing around the store, and the staff told me, you know, since you guys hung out here, thefts went down 80%. That could be a cause and effect relationship. Imagine that. See, guns in the hands of good people deter crime. Stop crimes and stop murders. There are many incidences where my colleagues or myself walked in on something or around something, and you know, the people who would like to shoot up the town changed their behavior instantly. Amazing. But of course we report, and the media reports too, that the police were at this Danzig court shooting here in Toronto that, you know, irked the liberal establishment and got this band on gun control again. And the people, you know, talked to the media and told them some of the things that really happened. So we discussed the tweets that came out saying that, you know, just passive observers, completely untrained, academically several lower rungs from what our police recruits must be. Maybe they even have criminal records and, you know, unstable work histories. Maybe they're on welfare or some sort of social assistance. But we're not the scum of the earth, but, you know, we're several levels down on the pecking order and would never be considered for employment with the City of Toronto or the police service or anything like that. But they all saw it coming. One guy to the point where he's even talking about, you got to bring body bags. That's how bad this party's going to get. So 2 noise complaints. Police went there twice. Maybe there were more complaints, but the police went there twice and completely messed up. So one of the things we see a change in, we talked about having more manpower. And that's something they're considering, is having compulsory overtime. Like, you got to look at it, you know, I'm a union guy to a point here and believing in labor rights and this or that, but you are the police. It's like you're a doctor. You have a limited skill set outside of the job. So if 5 people drop downstairs, I can't put them together because I'm not a surgeon. Maybe there's a guy across the street who is a surgeon. He's the only one who can do it. So, you know, it's too bad, but you're the professional, that's your job. Once in a while you gotta, you know, lay a little extra time on the line and do what you gotta do because it's an emergency. It's to save lives. And that's what you're supposed to be committed to doing. It's the same like that with being in the police service. Okay, all hell's breaking loose and you want to go to the baseball game and have some beers. But all hell's breaking loose. People are going to die. Once in a while you got to forego and just say, well, you know, I may miss this one today because, you know, I'm needed to save lives. That could be important to the whole world as a whole. You can't divorce yourself from the community just because you feel like it. I've had to work many, many overtimes. I know when they had the great evacuation of Mississauga way back in time, like I was putting in 20-hour days for a week. And we had to do it because there just wasn't anybody else. A major city in Canada evacuated and emptied, you know, a train wreck, poison gas coming out of it. It was a nightmare, but it had to be done. So what a great housing authority has done is they had a media training session for these people. I like that. So I guess too many people probably told the truth. on their tweets or other things. So the city put up a training session for these people. Not too many people came, it appears. Big waste of money as far as I'm concerned. So they could be taught on how to reveal things to the media. Well, one person who should have attended the course should have been the mayor of Toronto, because we have this little clipping here. It's called Shake Hands with the Devil, was in the Toronto Sun. Photo of the mayor meeting a neo-Nazi officer here. So I think that's good enough there. You know, the mayor's the guy with the big chain around his neck there, and the guy in the uniform over there. They never get their ties right, though. That's what I found with neo-Nazis. You got to work on that. You know, get it to fit in. If it looks, you got a nice uniform, but it looks slovenly if you don't get the tie in there properly. So it's just hanging there loose like a wet noodle. So there we go. You know, friends of the Bilderberg, Prime Minister Harper, the mayor, they have barbecues together, they spend a lot of good time together, and unfortunately Harper was, at least he went to one of those training sessions, I guess, on media relations, and he didn't invite the neo-Nazi over for a picture-taking session. They did that somewhere else, outside a camera view in a secure area. But that's why we need alternative media. That's why we got to rock the boat. Here's one alternative media that I just can't wait to come up. We used to have naked news a long time ago. This is going to be Sharia news here in Egypt, where the Egyptian TV is coming up with a new system, 6 hours a day on one of their channels. It's a religious station taken over by ultra-Orthodox Salafi Islamists, and they're going to have these for their presenters. So you save a lot of time and makeup, you know, with this setup. But by and large, you know, maybe we'll have a whole different style of news, and we'll get some stuff out. And you know, that may not make the normal news. And the advantage is to these girls is they don't have to worry about you know, somebody following them down the street and saying they don't like what they do, because nobody's going to know who they are. And you'll have a name and a voice perhaps, but you know, this will be it. Maria TV is named after a Coptic Christian woman who was married to the Prophet Muhammad. So we have something to look forward to in the news circle. Yes, we do. And you know, until the girls with the burqas take over here, you're stuck with me here on Conspiracy Cafe, because I think we do a pretty good job here at rocking the boat a little bit, changing the paradigms to make it better for you and everybody else, just evening it up a little bit. We're like the cop on the block, standing around on the beat. The bad guys don't really want to do anything in front of your face, because we'll turn on the big spotlight, shine it down on them. That's all part of your contribution, because you have to listen. And you listen when we turn on that big spotlight. They just got to shuffle off to Buffalo, so to speak, and they can't pull off their scams on you anymore. That's why it's so important to change the channel. It's a collective, joint collective interest here. So we broadcast here on that channel down at Bay and Dundas. We work hard at it. The staff here work hard at it. We put out a good product, I think, and we try to even out the score. Anything you can do to help us even out the score is greatly appreciated. So if you click on the PayPal or send something that's cashable in Canadian dollars up here to the studio, the only thing that don't work too much is these US money orders or postal money orders, so they're a little tough one to get cashed. I got to get one of my old buddies to haul down to the States when he goes and do it for me, but it all gets into the kitty somehow and makes this a viable alternative for you to change the channel too. And what are some of the reasons we do? Well, we're one of the few that do a lot of the things, like putting terrorism under the microscope, putting these false flag events under the microscope. We read the Twilight language, we understand the Google Doodles, and put them out. And that's something that's very, very different that nobody else does. And to a great extent, nobody does it better, if they can even do it at all. So this is one of the doodles we did after the last show, the Olympics doodle. It has a lot of significance, even to today's doodle, because that one involves a couple of rings, a red ring and a yellow ring. And we see here, right at the very beginning, these chaps, the guy has a red shirt holding the O, and the guy with the yellow shirt holding the O. I look at that as like a stoplight. Stop, proceed with caution with the yellow, and then maybe this chicky poo over here has the G for go and the green for go, as maybe being something to say in the sequence of doodles as they come along, that it's time. So this is a common misspelling of Google, because we have to spell what we see. And what we see is the G-O-O-G-E, Googe, which is a common misspelling of Googe, which is a street in London. It's also a tube stop. It's just south of Howland Street. And when we did the Amelia Earhart Doodle, we said Amelia Earhart was proceeding to Howland Island. She never made it there, but that's the thing we have to look for, is Howland in London. So what are the odds that in the next few days they come up with their next doodle, and the two targets that are encoded in this doodle are just geographically under the street? So here's our little map here from compliments of Google. This little bubble is a mosque that happens to just be on this under Howland Street on Googe, and then the tube stop is right over here. It's a smaller map, but you can go on our website, conspiracy-cafe.com.org.net, compliments of Brother John, and see that we're right on the money here. So what are the odds we have this tube stop and a mosque on the same street? This is the mosque at the corner of Charlotte and Googe. Never heard of the place before, so it's a learning curve. I have looked at some of the underground places in London, and this is one of them. This station is part of the underground military-industrial complex. This goes back to World War II. This is a series of tube stops that had underground bunkers built underneath them. This is a slight representation of a general idea of what they look like, but this is how big they are. It's a large network of tunnels. They were designed to hold 12,000 people, and then after the war they reduced that to about 8,000 people and made it probably a little more comfortable. They are, you know, everybody's pretty much been on a subway train or an underground train to some degree, so you know how big those tunnels can be, and you have tunnels on the side, interconnecting tunnels and platforms all over the place. So this is just a major, major setup. Blocks and blocks of downtown London have these facilities underneath, and these are the old ones that aren't used very much anymore, if at all. A lot of times they're just used for storage. So you know, when you look at the number of buildings that are here above ground, it gives you some perspective on how much room and how much detail is underground. This is a representation of one of the tunnels. They were filming a movie called Hidden City in 1990, and it just gives you some idea of the fact, you know, how big these places are and how intricate they are. It also allows agents to get underground and travel from A to B without being seen or spotted in a network of tunnels and passageways that most people don't even know exist. So when something happens above ground, everybody's just in shock and awe that these things would have happened. They have absolutely no idea or rationalization that these underground connections could have been used, should have been used, would have been used. They just cannot comprehend that. To them, it's just a big, dark conspiracy. So what's going to happen if something happens at that tube stop? The mosque is just down the street. He did it. Blame him. And it's easy to blame someone else because you can't comprehend just the extravagance of the planning that these people go into. They're master criminals. Master criminals. Part of the reason they're master criminals is because they haven't been caught and brought to justice. They're only caught on little shows like this that point the big finger and press them against the wall and hold them there and watch them squeal. And that's good value for the money, I think. So this is the outside of the Googe station. It was Eisenhower's bunker in the day, so they call it the Eisenhower Center. They have a large open portion with a loading dock to bring material in. And then, of course, on the sides, they have these other doors that are easily used as a point of egress or exit to come and go, and no one would ever know. So if you saw a couple of people come out of this doorway not having any idea what it was or what it meant, you wouldn't be the slightest bit suspicious. It was just ironic that this phone booth had an advertisement here for the musical Wicked, because this is Wicked. But these things are all over London and all over a lot of the big cities in the world. We are all familiar with the Illuminati card game, and everybody picked this out as Big Ben. It's not. The best representation, of course, was the Waco Clock Tower in Ginza in Tokyo, because you see the top is flat and it had this little spire on top. So I'd have to say primarily that was one of the best choices. But while looking at some of these underground bunkers, I found this one, the Stockwell Tunnel entrance, which has a flat four-cornered clock on top. And maybe in the old days it even had a radio mast, so it may have looked very similar to the one in the Illuminati card game. Maybe they use it for several cards, or maybe it's just part of the Twilight language to point the finger at the target. The writing on the wall is, at the going down of the sun in the morning, we will remember them. I think it's a fitting clue, and you appreciate the rule, because we had to stay up into the wee hours to work this out. And of course, in light of the Batman scenario, of course, my affiliation was with the Boy Wonder, and that's him there with myself dressed in period uniform from a long period ago. I guess when it was respectable to be a constable. You didn't have all this overt weaponry and all this sort of thing. Although that's my original tunic, but that's an old Toronto police helmet on top from days gone by. This wasn't this overt, beat him into the ground with the tackleberry weapon system. The policeman was the super diplomat. Something hopefully we'll live to see again, and get rid of this New World Order style of Gestapo that they have. Then we get into the next doodle, as soon as it loads, which is very, very unique as well. When you first look at them, sometimes you just wonder, like, how could you ever come and pull anything out of these doodles? It's very difficult. You just look at going, what could they be possibly telling you, until you start to get some clues and break it down and look far deeper than a lot of other people would look. Even the wall in the background looks like that tube station at the end of the other doodle blog. Right? It was round and it had the writing on it, so you had that gray wall. So even that is a piece, even though I didn't mention it in this blog. I didn't see that till later. But we see the target. That's obviously one of the most important things. The archer is firing the weapon. She's female. The Earhart doodle involves a female. She's taking aim at a target with 3 concentric circles. They may very well imply a 000 or 000, and 000 is the emergency code, the 911 for Australia. So in a way, they're telling us this is a 911 coming up. The object lesson is very clear. This shot may very well instigate another 9/11. 000 is another piece of out-of-order execution, a term used with microprocessors, but because we're watching and tormenting these buggers so actively, we're probably putting a lot of the execution of their plans out of order, because maybe now there's people in London who are actually watching some of these tube stations or photographing some of the back exits, or setting up camera surveillance there so that we can spy on them and catch them either coming to or leaving from the signs of their evil. And that's a good thing. And of course, too, when we look at the doodle, we get G-O-G-L-E. We have to just read it for what it is. It's a common misspelling of Google as well, but it's also a home remedy in Yiddish, from Russian origin as well. And it's a cute one too, because it involves the honey and baking soda cancer cure. So that was a good one. You have honey and baking soda together. Cancer thrives on sugar, comes in for the sugar rush from the honey, meets the baking soda, the alkalinity's changed, kills the little suckers. The ultimate little bait there. So, but of course that's not part of our blog, but it's something you could keep on your little coding cure for things. We have a link there to the home remedy, so you can make it yourself even if you want. But this home remedy was supposed to be a violation of Jewish law, specifically the Shulchan Aruch Code of Jewish Law. But it was granted an exception because it made the voice sweeter. And like a lot of laws, they're made to be broken, and there's lots of exceptions granted for whatever the New World Order wants. Of course, it's just kind of funny that you have the 3 crowns on the cover of the Code of Law, and the 3 crowns are the common sign for Sweden, the trikroner. And a lot of these terrorists are being speculated to come from Sweden. The clean, non-Muslim looking guy with a passport that can get him in and out. Another version of 000 is used in chess. It's called castling. It allows 2 pieces to be moved at the same time, something you'd really want to do in a false flag operation. It involves the rooks and the kings or the queens. The white in this little diagram is castled king side, 000. The black has castled queen side, 000. And then when I checked Google, there were 5 pubs named 3 crowns in London. One of them was closed and under renovation. That makes it on the short list. This number C here, 8 East Road, Old Street, London. But then, of course, when I Googled it again, it wasn't in the search choices anymore. So it's a good thing I made a screenshot of that so you could see where it is. And, of course, one of the big things is they come after with this Munich massacre. That's been brought up in the news. It's the 40th year anniversary coming soon. That Olympics was in September, though. A whole part of this was a plot for a better, grander, new world order. At this time, you know, we're supposed to be looking for a Swede, a German, and 2 Britons, maybe. But then, as I check even on Wikipedia, you know, who needs a classified source? It's all coming out that German forensic psychologist George Sieber created 26 terrorism scenarios to aid organizers in planning security. What happened at the Munich massacre was situation 21. And the Germans were pretty much against preparing or setting up for that scenario in particular. I wonder why. Because they were going to do it, I guess. That's probably a really good reason. So this has become front page news in the German media and Der Spiegel. Probably doesn't become front page news in other news media. German authorities had a tip-off from a Palestinian informant in Beirut 3 weeks before the massacre. The informant told Germany the Palestinians were planning an incident at the Olympics. And the Foreign Ministry in Bonn viewed the tip-off seriously enough to pass it on to the Secret Service in Munich and urged that all possible security measures be taken. Authorities failed to act on the tip and have never acknowledged it in 40 years. The newspaper further adds only a part of the 40-year cover-up by the German authorities of mishandling of the massacre. So, without the free press, where would we stand? The newspaper reported the government has been hiding 3,808 files containing tens of thousands of documents. Der Spiegel said it obtained secret reports by authorities, embassy cables, minutes of cabinet meetings that demonstrate the unprofessionality of German officials in handling the measure. They knew, and they let it happen. One of my old sayings, lie hop, my hop. Let it happen on purpose. That means you made it happen on purpose. Because this was a plan from the very beginning to do this. So we can go after various groups in the casus belli for war, or we can go after individual rights and freedoms. We can get you used to living in the police state, to go through this maelstrom of security in England, spending a fortune on top of fortune on top of fortune for basically nothing. Because the big problem, the big fault, isn't when you point down, it's when you point up to the leaders. And you know instantly they did it when they have to classify documents and records. There's no other explanation. They're not doing it for your good. So we see in the castling maneuver, there's the man in black. He's a 00 as well, 007 in the triple O maneuver, castled next to the Queen. The Queen as a effigy, an actress or actor. And James Bond jump out of a helicopter and come down into the Olympics in a giant show wall. Then, of course, I find out that James Bond in a video game version, Nightfire, the Rook, as described in the chess, attacks a cable car with a rocket launcher. Documents lead Bond to a nuclear power plant being decommissioned by a company called Phoenix. Phoenix comes up over and over and over again, like the Phoenix Islands, the Phoenix Memo, very popular thing in terrorism and Al-Qaeda. And then, of course, we see our happy-go-lucky young man here. I just put that in because there was this nose on the character shooting the arrow. You just have to wonder, his nose is very important in the news. All of a sudden, we have another picture we can show you, compliments of another good friend of the show. It goes into much greater detail, but we can see this guy's got a large flat nose and this guy's nose is rather thin and long. These are not the same people. Is that important? I don't know, I would think it's important. Let me see here. Oh, you don't need that until I get where I gotta go. I have to look at my ugly face until we load that picture up. But this one, is just chilling. It's a nice side-by-side comparison of our guys, okay, now we're ready. And it's big, so everybody can see it well. So we put these two pictures together, not me personally, but people who are catching on. You see, that's the beauty of sharing all this information. People are catching on. They're learning to think freely and uninhibited on their own. It's a miracle. So you don't need me, you need what's in here. You need your brain. And there we go. We put these two pictures together and we can see very, very clearly that this isn't the same guy. Too many things do not match. When he appeared in court, of course, they no longer had TV coverage or photographers or anything like that because they don't want to show anybody that, you know, the guy's all drugged out. They even took the biography of his personal psychiatrist, Dr. Lynn Fenton, of the University of Colorado. They removed it from the internet. But see, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are digging, doing the investigative reporting. And a lot of people looked into her background and they posted it on blogs all over the place. So I had a quick glance. Most of it's at the University of Colorado, but she was working for the United States Air Force in the 90s, some time ago. And that could have some deeper, broader meaning in the whole affair. Then we get to the fencing doodle, and that was another one, like, you know, you just sit at it and look at it for a minute and you just go, wow, man, what are they trying to tell me? It's usually, you know, if I do one or two every so often, that's a lot. To get them on a daily basis is really knocking us about. But of course, one of the most important things is in the fencing, we see the point of the sword hitting the L, setting off all sorts of sparks. It's a very pertinent point of contact. But this show is the point of the sword. They know that too. So are we thrusting or are we blocking? Did we stop their thrust by interfering with the order of execution of their plots? Or did they stop our thrust that we didn't go deep enough? Time will tell. So we won't give up. It's good sport. So the term pari that they use in fencing is from the Old Latin, make ready, prepare. Variations, warding off. So that's what we have to do. We have to parry, we have to prepare, we have to make ready, we have to ward off these evil bastards so they can't get away with these plots anymore. There used to be an old saying, only the dead have seen the end of war. I think we can change that. If you know what causes these wars, and you see the deceptions and the lies, and we remove that, then the living will see the end of war. And that's a good day. We see people in the shadows in this picture. We see it in the next Google Doodle as well. Are they the sinister forces, the people whose intentions are not known? They leave us with a word too, of course, after you take away the letters that they take away, G-O-G-E. And it turns out that's a very common word all over the place. It's a television show in Africa. It's the name of a tennis player. It's a mosque in Ankara. It's a sports team in Belgium. It's a stringed instrument. It's even an oil company in Nigeria. And, you know, the first name of a lot of big busty girls on the internet. So it's a very common name, something I never heard of before. But part of the thing that interests me, of course, is the Belgian sports team, Goges Hell. So they have this arena with 33,000 players. And of course, that's the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. 3 and 3 is 6. Terrace is 12,000. That can work out to a 3, so we can get to 666. Or we can add up the beginning, 333 and another 3 to be 9111. A subset of 9/11. And of course the stadium is the thrill in the Olympics. We also see the sparks flying. There were things flying through the air as the Shard Tower had a major laser show. The Shard Tower is very, very bizarre. We'll get into that in some other part of the next doodle as well. But it's financed by Middle Eastern assets, and the building is Sharia law compliant. You probably didn't know that, they used to have all kinds of things about safety and stuff, ISOO or IOSS or whatever, compliant this and that, all over buildings and factories all over the world. Well, now we have a new system. We have to be Sharia law compliant. And yummy, yummy, yummy. Very few would put into the effort that we put into to look at a lot of these things. We're also going to look at a short snippet from the Disney movie Tron, with a scene of a nuclear explosion in a tunnel in places that are very familiar to London or possibly the Olympics. So, of course, letters that were taken out of the doodle, L is for London, O is for the Olympics, T is going to be for Tron. So let's see here, I'll switch chapters here, and hopefully this puppy starts out well. You might have to put a quarter in the meter or something like that. It was slow to start a moment ago. Come on, baby. Okay, kickstart.
Accessing archived data. As the occupation settles in,
I came across with this episode of Disney cartoon, Tron Uprising, named Blackout, where apparently there's a subliminal message concerning the London Olympics. It appears after a nuclear-like blast in some underground tunnels that end in some sort of arena, that totally suggests a reference to the Olympic Stadium. The explosion is caused by a terrorist-like sabotage, and occurs during a competition. Check this out. Notice that the laser display resembles the laser apparatus of the London Shard.
welcome to the Argon Lake. The only room, there are no rooms. Programs, res your engine.
Also notice that there are 5 light cycle bikes with different colors. That seems to be a reference to the 5 Olympic rings.
Oh, great.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
See you around.
YouTube, because a chap who put it on YouTube said it was gone before he could turn his head. He said some unflattering words that we don't have to repeat, but this we found on a video posting site called Daily Motion, so that might be something you look at in future to post some things in case they do take it off YouTube. We have to allow freedom of speech because we need that to keep us going. It's very, very important. What we get to see, some of the things that we found in my next doodle code were also in that video. So you see the, there was like a stick with a yellow light, That's something that's pertinent in the next Google code. The red circles, very, very important. In the next Google code, that's the Google Rings code of the men's rings. So in this doodle, which looks pretty cute, it is really very, very complex. You see more of the shadowy figures that, you know, are like spectators or maybe just people in the shadows in the background. We were left with the letters G, G, L, E. The O's used as the rings are removed. And then G, G, L, E we determined before was an aircraft. We also found another aircraft that was German, D, G, G, L, E, a red one. But it's those circles, a red one and a yellow one, and the guy's got a green shirt, just like the girl had the green swimsuit at the first doodle, green for go. He's got one hand on the red circle, stop, the other one on the yellow, like a traffic light, proceed with caution. But one of the other things that come out in these things are, the red circle is the red ring of death. The red ring of death is an error found in the Xbox game. And we saw several of those red rings in the Tron. We also saw the yellow stick. It's also called the yellow ring of death, although frequently it's not a ring, it's actually a straight line. But it was in several places. In one place it filled up the whole screen in that video, about the 1 minute 50-second mark. And then of course, powered on, we have the green circle. Maybe when we see that, that'll be the symbol that they're going with the plan. We have our little Olympic flag there. I like the little wavy one because it looks cute, and you can see these circles. And then this is a view of the laser show. This is the shard. The shard is 309.6 meters high. 309 adds up to 12, which adds up to 3, with the infamous 6. So you get 3 6s, 666. Encoded into the height of the building. Tell us who made it, what's it for. 1,016 feet high. Turn that upside down and reverse it, and we get the classic 9/11. It's built in a pyramid shape. It's put together financially by a package of Qatari investors. They paid 150 million pounds to secure 80% stake and take control of the project. The new owners promised the first tranche of finance, allowing construction of the tower to begin. The consortium included the Qatari National Bank, Q Invest, or Qatari Islamic Bank, Qatari developer Barwa Real Estate. So we see very, very clearly they have all the symbols in place. Everything regarding this Olympics was symbols in place. I wonder if we can find another video just for fun here. Some of these loading up. Let's play with this one and see if it'll go with our skydivers.
Now, as you can imagine, the idea was born right at the beginning, as far as I know, and I got contacted, and of course, you know, been working with an amazing team on an amazing show, as you all saw. So proud to be a part of it. Over a period of you know, several months, I've been working with the helicopter team and with the ground crew and examining where it is we can land and examining wind conditions and how that would affect what heights we would go out of and which directions we would approach from. And over a period of time at various airfields, we've been doing training jumps, and then ultimately in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been bringing it to the stadium to test jump there.
Now, Gary, you've done an awful lot of jumps before, I know, but this seems to be a bit of a different style for you. Have you ever jumped wearing such a fetching outfit before?
Not such a fetching outfit, no, and I thoroughly enjoyed getting dressed up as a Queenie last night.
And we understand that there were bloomers on display and everything as well.
Well, yes, that was something that the costume department had considered, was that obviously no one wanted the press to be seeing up our lovely Queenie skirt, and so they introduced the bloomers, which was clearly a very good idea, so well done them.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been the done thing at all, would it? And what about where you landed then?
So we, myself and Mark, the guy that was playing James Bond, we landed out on one of the bridges. So part of our training had been landing on the various bridges determined by the wind conditions. And so it was quite a tight landing, but, you know, that's what we do. It's professional. So, yeah, I hope that everybody thought that they got the right people in for the job.
Yeah, well, I know that, you know, you've done lots of jumps before, but the eyes of the world were on you. And as you say, you had a pretty tight space to land in. So that must have added to the pressure. Were you feeling nervous?
Yeah, I mean, one always feels nervous, and certainly on such a big occasion, then I guess it's difficult not to.
How memorable do you think this one will be for you?
Oh, you know, I think this one is probably unsurpassable. It's, you know, it'll hang in my memory until I become senile and can't remember it anymore. But absolutely, what an occasion, what a thing to be involved in. Absolutely stunning.
And the beauty of an operation like that is it gives the pilots a lot of training moving in and out of the Olympic site, getting close. Close for what? Something still to be revealed when the green circle comes, perhaps. We'll get into the Illuminati blog that I found. I was listening to the Gary Bell show in Toronto, and he didn't seem to be prepared for a show on the symbolism of these Olympic rituals. So it's too bad, so he doesn't come back till Saturday. So we can lead the charge now. Tuesday, this blog, Illuminati Occult Symbolism in the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony, is just absolutely mind-boggling. So the individual scratching his head, watching the Olympic opening ceremony, thinking, what on earth has this got to do with sport? Ancient bloodlines used power symbols and ritual to hypnotize the uninitiated. Bewilderment as to the sheer bluntness of last night's bloodline ritual masquerading as a sporting event. And he's very correct about that. It hypnotizes people. People just don't even think. They just blindly follow and walk into to these rituals. Even the shape of the stadium is just like the the all-seeing eye, and then you have all these pyramids inside. The classic 9 on the bus is another giveaway. Jerusalem, the city of God. Babylon, the city of man. Mentioned 250 times in the Bible. Babylon is a birthplace of false religions, black magic, and paganism. Nimrod roughly translates to rebel. Babel is roughly translated into gateway of the gods. Mystery Babylon represents corruption. It's a very sophisticated counterfeit system that attempts to sell itself as the original. And that's the world of lies. A counterfeit system pretending to sell itself off as the original. And we buy into those lies because we won't look beyond the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz, to see who's pulling our strings. Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, the abominations of the earth, Revelation 17:5. The opening ceremony with an orchestra playing Nimrod by Enigma Variations. The world's first dictator, the builder of the Tower of Babel, first and most excellent master of Freemasonry fraternity. World order can be traced back to Babylon, where King Nimrod was rebellious and resentful of God. A single global government to control the economic, political, and religious issues throughout the world. God confused the languages, causing the citizens to spread out. Mystery Babylon became fragmented. The concept of the New World Order died. And we can see now in the modern era, of course, all the forces of evil want to bring on this global government, this global structure, this anti-God setup again. Then, of course, one of the other things featured in this Olympics was the maypole dance, showcased in the first minutes. The maypole dance is an ancient pagan worship fertility rite. The maypole represents the male principle, the male phallus. Ribbons represent the female principle. The wreath on top represents the vagina of the goddess, traced back as far as ancient Babylon. So they don't teach you about those fine details, about the symbolism of the rituals that you're seduced to perform through your ignorance. The Olympic bell was rung, a song named Jerusalem was sung. Jerusalem, builded where the dark satanic mills existed. We did that on a show in great detail, something to listen to again if you want to refresh your memory. From Shakespeare's The Tempest, lines of a half man, half beast, which is things the New World Order are working on as we speak to make these genetically modified things that are completely outside of God's creation. The Tempest, the theme of the 2012 Olympic Games, a giant figure holding a wand, thought to be Prospero from the Tempest, a cauldron feature in the stadium, were part of the preparations. The Tempest, travelers arrive at an island ruled by Prospero, the magus whose mastery over all nature. It depicts societies ruled over by an elite, made gods by virtue of their secret knowledge. Both works serve to define the occult philosophy of the Rosicrucians, Freemason, and the Illuminati. Work number 1197, which breaks into 911, 77, when you add them all up, 666. This is their religion, all this material. So we can scan down to this drawing that this chap has put up, the Age of Steam, Prospero, where it's found on the map, Captain Hook, the hospital bed, the water wheel, the cauldron, the pits, all laid out nicely for us. This chap has done an excellent job on this blog. Work 1197, all the bells in a country rung. Witches' altar bells have been used for centuries in spell crafting. They invoke the goddess in Wiccan witchcraft ritual, signal the beginning or ending of a spell. The outer portion of the bell is the female, the hammer on the inside is the male. They like to put that in all the time too. The ritual took place at 8:12 a.m. on the 27th of July. A reverse of the date, the end of the Olympics, 12/8, 12 August, in the British date format. Members of the occult are known to write backwards as a secret sign to their initiates. The bell rung continuously for 3 minutes. That's 3 times 60 seconds, another 666. Was brought to you from the Devil's Bridge in Wales. The ringing of the world's largest tuned bell. A precedent established in 1936 at the Nazi German Berlin Olympics. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. The bell cost £27 million. The ceremony was on 27 July. Be not afraid, the isle is full of noises. That was spoken in The Tempest by Caliban, forced into servitude after Prospero and his cohorts occupy the island. Prospero considers Caliban to be literally spawn of the devil. And this is, the thing we expose to our children. We see a nice picture of the bell, the maypole, our character Caliban, the monster. The bloodline families have used symbols all over the 2012 Olympics from the outset. The lighted torch, the flame of illumination, is an ancient symbol of the Illuminati representing the hidden knowledge withheld from the human race. Sir Evelyn de Rothschild made a point of being photographed with the Olympic torch. Zion was clearly disseminable in the Olympic logo. Israel and Palestine in a new Jerusalem or a new world order, creation of a one world government, forging the 5 rings representing the 5 continents of the earth coming together, global, supernatural, or national authority, Israel, Israeli, Ra, El, the amalgamation of ancient Egypt, Canaanite deities, Ra, Isis, and Ei. Bloodlines originate from Sumeria, Babylon, Canaan, and Egypt. Mystery cults, the ancient priest class, and pharaohs became the European royal bloodlines and the Venetian banking oligarchs. A major symbol of the ruling bloodline families is the pyramid and the all-seeing eye, knowledge that only the initiated or the illuminated have access to. The pyramid has 13 steps, the sacred 12 and 1. The Olympic Stadium floodlights are depictions of an all-seeing eye, and they have 13 of those little things there as well. There's a depiction of the stadium, lights on and off, the all-seeing eye. Britain's green and present land was transformed by the Industrial Revolution and the dark satanic mills. Overseen by the 13 all-seeing eyes, the 13 ruling bloodlines, they were telling us that they have been the controlling force behind the development of history. Then there was the National Health Service scene, which appeared to be a mock child sacrifice to a giant hooded entity. The cremation of care ritual at Bohemian Grove involves the effigy of a child sacrificed to Moloch. Other children in the hospital beds were then pursued by smaller dark entities. Ceremony culminated, the Olympic cauldron rising into the air and transforming into a giant flaming eye. When the 23-ton bell was struck, the ruling bloodlines officially declared the beginning of the new esoteric New World Order. There was a scene with a lone tree on top of a hill. Two meanings, one for themselves and one for the masses. One is fashioned after the ziggurat. The tree is the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. The entire basis of the elite's occult mystery religion is the knowledge given to Adam and Eve, so-called secrets of Satan, Revelation 2:24, supposed to make one equal to God. Satan is trying to make himself the most high by using mountains, pyramids, ziggurats, and towers to ascend himself. And there we have the tree of knowledge at the opening ceremony, descending the tree of knowledge. Leaving the agrarian world, Garden of Eden, we find ourselves in the Industrial Revolution Babylon. Smokestacks, something entirely different to the Illuminati. They are Ashera poles, the pagan moon goddess that originated in ancient Babylon under the rule of Nimrod and his wife Semiramis. The pole itself is a phallic symbol representing the sun god, the circle at the bottom representing the female. God says of Ashera poles, do not set up any wooden Asherah pole beside the altar you build to the Lord your God, Deuteronomy 16:21. And Ahab also made an Asherah pole and did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than did all the kings of Israel before him. 1 Kings 16:33. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, cut down the Asherah poles, and burn their idols in the fire, Deuteronomy 7:5. So considering the potential for violence, there's our smokestacks, our poles burning, and the fact that these are a giant abomination to God. Will we get protection from some diabolical plot to discharge some sort of fiendish weapon at these Olympics? We enter a hospital of sick children where the celebration of pop culture begins. Fictional villains such as Voldemort and Cruella de Vil. Mystery occult religion did not disappear. It is thriving today in America and British pop culture. Focus on magic with a J.K. Rowling emphasis on Disney, Mary Poppins. So they try to give you something sweet and wonderful and turn it into something entirely else. We have the black and white Masonic costumes standing out here, the fire. The tribute to the National Health System, hundreds of doctors and nurses wheeling children on hospital beds, the recreation of what could best be described as a giant Franken baby, represent Tammuz, the reincarnation of Nimrod, the first Antichrist. Why does it not have a body? So this is the image here. Diabolical plans to use genocide on the masses and keep many asleep. So we can get both pictures in there. Images of these fiery rings have instantly evoked thoughts of Ezekiel's vision. Ezekiel 1:6. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl. And they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. Ezekiel 10:10. And as for their appearances, they four had one likeness, as if a wheel had been in the midst of a wheel. A wheel in the midst of a wheel. And then we see our pop culture idol, Paul McCartney, if he really is Paul McCartney. Many allegations of him being killed many, many long years ago when I was a young gaffer, that's for sure, and replaced with a doppelganger. The classic red of the New World Order. The question in this article, would a government use weapons against its own people? Well, we do that all the time with chemtrails. And then a little scripture to go with this, Isaiah 14:12. How you were fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you were cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. Have they officially declared the opening of the New World Order as opposed to the opening of the Olympics? Our jury is out. And let's see here. Let's have a... This doodle one, I guess, is loaded. This was the diving doodle. Let's have a look at this. So one of the little factors that made that one different, I didn't write that one up, but in the video portion it came with a lot of identifying numbers that may be pertinent in the future. The fencing one had a little bit too, the measurements of the pist that they use in fencing may be very pertinent. So it's something we just have to keep on the side burner in case the day comes and we can look back and say, we have the numbers. Mitt Romney got in a lot of trouble at the Olympics. Good man. He said that they weren't very well prepared in their security. No word of a lie. He met with the head of British Foreign Intelligence Agency, MI6, a very unusual type of thing for a presidential candidate to do. And I think part of the reason why they're meeting, of course, is because things aren't really going all that well. We're out of order. So he says it's hard to know just how well it will turn out. So maybe they don't even know. But of course, when his big black Suburban is mentioned in the article, it's at 11 Downing Street, not 10. So we need a 9. Maybe we took that away, but we do have the 11. We had a ton of news too that we haven't been able to get through because of some of the larger complex issues we have to deal with the shooting and the Olympics. And some of them are very, very important. And you should be aware of them if you're not. Maybe you missed them in mainstream media or alternative media as they came along. The one that I've harped on the show happened again in New York. Mysterious force blocks car remotes. So all these cars that are controlled by the chip, radio frequencies, they screwed up. And in a certain area, unfortunately near a funeral home, but the cars don't start. So that's why I'm a big believer in keeping an older vehicle, because when the time comes that you really need this baby, you want to make sure it starts. So even if you're so old you got the crank start in one of those old Ladas or something like that, you know, I say people will laugh at you now, they won't laugh at you later. The bombshell leaked UN treaty does ban guns. Very much, of course it does. That's the whole raison d'etre of the globalization process of the New World Order, is to disarm you, make you helpless, and slaughter you like dogs as the time comes. It's a very long piece. I won't be going into it that much. They say they're going to eradicate the illicit trade of conventional arms and prevent their diversion to illegal and authorized use, such as terrorism and organized crime. That's in the preamble. And of course, we know we got like Operation Fast and Furious. They're giving out guns to drug dealers to kill innocent people. Compliments of one of these so-called member nations. That isn't going to change. Most of the guns used for terrorism or serious organized crime come from the nation states. The so-called sovereign rights and abilities or responsibility of the nation state to regulate and control transfers of conventional arms that take place exclusively within their territory. So based on the fact that they have sovereignty, they can take away the sovereignty of the individual and do whatever the hell they please with them. So there's nothing in this so-called treaty that is for the common person. The development of human rights and peace and security, the three pillars of the United Nations, are interlinked and mutually reinforcing. Well, I'll tell you something. When it's going down, like it did in the Sudan or in Yugoslavia, and you're unarmed and you're helpless, there are no human rights, there is no peace, and there is no security. The only way you can have that is if you as an individual or a group of small individuals are armed to protect yourself. The only thing you can do is flee. The UN, they say the contribution made by the UN 2001 Program of Action to prevent, combating, and eradicating illicit trade in small arms and light weapons and all its aspects is kind of the basis of this. The manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, parts, components, ammunition, the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. If there is a transnational organized crime group or network, it is the United Nations. They're stealing the planet Earth. They're a major stumbling block. The challenges faced by victims of armed conflict and their need for adequate care, rehabilitation, and social and economic inclusion. Women and children are particularly affected in many of these countries, and primarily because they don't have arms or access to arms, or have been brainwashed to never think that they will ever need arms. The girls play with dolls and the boys run around and play with their guns and play war or something like that. It goes right back to childhood. You're programmed and brainwashed to be helpless, to be a victim, to be a slave. There's an old saying from ages and ages ago, God created man and Colt made them equal. So that way even the big bully comes along who can break you in two. That little pistola from Colonel Colt can change the outlook very, very quickly for some of those big bullies. When they go in any kind of group of bullies, they always pick. I was watching this video with Agent 99 about the Indian Wars in the United States, and you're talking about probably the most ruthless type of guerrilla fighter ever known in history, or a lot of the Indian warriors from various tribes, the Apaches, the Comanches, pick one. Well, so many I never heard of before. They could ride a horse hanging onto it by its neck and shoot a bow and arrow at the same time at a full gallop. I'd be dead. But they could do it. And even at the height of their bravery, they still would generally try to find small, isolated groups of people to attack, not necessarily white people, because they fought wars amongst tribes as well, where they're predominantly women and children and non-combatants, or groups that aren't very well armed, and attack them in large numbers. That tells you something. They're not as brave as they put out to be. And part of the reason they don't want to go after a lot of these other groups is they're armed to the teeth and they'll fight back. And you're going to take a lot of casualties. What brought peace, ultimately, I guess, was the repeating firearm. And that could bring peace in a lot of places of the world. But one of the first things they do before they go into some of these areas, especially in Africa, is disarm everybody. And they talk about these stupid non-governmental organizations furthering goals and objectives of the treaty. And in that respect, they are. And the sad part is, I know here in Canada that some of our shooting organizations are non-governmental organizations going to the United Nations. And then I hear in an article here from the CBC that Canada revises its stance on the UN arms treaty. They're going to take away the codicil that we don't want traditional sporting rifles and shotguns included, and we're just going to change the preamble, and now everybody's fighting about the change to the preamble, but we back down. So the federal government comes forward to say, oh yeah, we're getting rid of the gun registry, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And at the same time, Mr. John Baird, one of our cabinet ministers, changes the rules. So now we're not going to register the guns, we're not going to do it. We're going to get Mikey to do it here at the UN. He's a Russian soldier. He's got the guts to kill you, bayonet you, and throw your still beating heart on the floor to be stomped on. One of the groups that signed on to this, of course, is the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, Tony Bernardo, their leader, where he feels that this is fine. It empowers independent nations to set their own discretionary policies regarding civilian-owned firearms within their borders. Well, that just means they can put the rope around your neck and hang you, stupid. Just because you got what you want in this parliament doesn't mean in the next parliament they're not going to change all that around. Once you submit to the fact that you don't have an individual right to own anything and that the sovereign nation can make up all the rules, well, they can ban anything tomorrow and then put you in the oven. Who we empower, we don't empower independent nations. See, it goes like this. You empower we, the people. It comes from the Bill of Rights. It comes from the Bill of Rights in Old England. After the Civil War, it's in the United States. Founding documents too. We, the people. That's who controls the boat, not these independent nations of cutthroats and bandits. You never surrender your sovereignty or your weapons to anything like that because you can't. They're evil, inherently evil, probably under the control of these Illuminati families, going way back, way back, way back to Babylon the Great. This is a battle, not just for the soul of the planet, the soul in your body, it's the soul of humanity, and any kind of righteousness that you could find from God. That's a hell of a fight. And we had, some thought laws, something from 1984, the thought police. So you're reading somebody else's tweets. A guy snowed in at an airport in England, in Northern Ireland, and he's really angry. So he tweets people on his list to say, he's so angry, he'd blow up the airport. Somebody goes over it days later, and they arrest him and charge him with one of these terrorism type offenses. So the trouble is, when you're reading somebody else's mail, you don't exactly know what they meant to say to the people who do know what the person meant to say. So if someone outside of the group reads it, it has a completely different interpretation. He won his day in court, good for him, he was acquitted. And a similar type of thing was in this article here in the Toronto Sun, July the 28th. Suffer the little children in Niagara. So that's what it looks like, gives you an idea what the title is, so you can Google it and find it. In a nutshell, it's another Orwellian thought crime scenario. No names are involved because they involve minor children. And you got to wonder, was anyone ever a minor child that's an adult? No one remembers anything about being a kid? Laughing, teasing, joking, making comments, good, bad, or indifferent. So these two kids on a bus are brothers, one's 6 and one's 12, as I recall, and they make, some sort of comment about oral sex. They're overheard by the bus driver. The bus driver reports it to the principal. The principal reports it to the Children's Aid Society. The Children's Aid Society report it to the police, and the older of the two brothers is arrested for being, a sexual assault perpetrator against his brother. But what they were really discussing, according to the parents, was the fact that the older brother was molested by someone else. But in this case here, the victim is on charge for indecent assault at 12 years old. The police bullied them and tormented them in ways that are just almost too disgusting to even discuss. But that's what they did. A thought crime. You're 12 years old, you don't even know who Orwell is. So the kids can't live together under the same roof because that's part of the court conditions when they bail you out. You know, they arrest this kid at school, put him in handcuffs. Just if anybody tormented and terrorized him, it was the state. But then this child just doesn't know how serious a thought crime is and how important the thought police will be in your future. Bill Clinton gave the CIA, and the CIA gave the Iranians the blueprint for the nuclear bomb. I'd forgotten about that. That's way back when Billy Boy was around talking about oral sex with Monica Lewinsky. So they used a double agent, a Russian scientist, according to a new book, State of War, by James Risen, a New York Times reporter who exposed the Bush administration's controversial NSA spying operation. Gotta like that guy. He's right on the nuclear trigger. It was called Operation Merlin. I remember hearing about that long before Iran was the top notch on the news. So how do we know sometimes they got weapons of mass destruction, or WMDs, as the man before used to say? It's because we gave it to them. We got all the sales slips. So why are they wrong? Like some of these plots and conspiracies, we go up, look at our leaders first. They're the ones shooting up the store. If they were on the ball, this wouldn't happen. Top Obama security official briefed Israeli Prime Minister on the U.S. plans for Iran. They're ready. Russia submits to enhanced draft resolution on Syria. They're ready. RCMP to ease Canadians into the idea of U.S. agents in Canada. I ran across a person who didn't know too much last week. Sometimes I tease people because they just imply that, you know, I should know something because they talk to somebody that, you know, I have no idea that they talk to them. And I laugh at them and joke with them and just say, you know, I don't find out about these things till next year. The National Security Agency will tell me about your phone call next year. I'll get an email or a text, and that'll tell me that you talked to so-and-so that I didn't know that. So I got to do it the old-fashioned way. I got to ask you and make a phone call. And this woman looking at me like I'm from the moon. I said, well, surely you know about some of these things about the National Security Agency, how they're going to monitor all your phone calls, all your text messages, how they have all these new facilities. Never heard of it. And I said, well, you must know about the fact now that American law enforcement can come into Canada with full RCMP powers. And this woman's looking at me like I'm a deranged lunatic. And I said, well, here, let me check this out for you online here. Let's Google it quickly. Operation Shipwriter. Oh, here's a good source. The RCMP website. There we go. American law enforcement be sworn in as RCMP with full police powers across Canada, come in armed, do anything they want, anytime they want. Generally, these initiatives are supposed to be with the FBI, the DEA. I think some involve the U.S. Coast Guard. They snuck it in the omnibus budget bill. It's a three-step program. Step one is we just come over for coffee, maybe visit you at your police station, ride a boat, cross officially the border and come back, do some shopping. And then we step it up to step 2, step 3. When we get to the final steps, of course, well then there is no border anymore. So any law enforcement agency in Canada can come down south and vice versa. American ones can come north with absolutely no checks, balances, or controls because you're technically still in another country. So I can complain, but you know, my local police commission can't do anything about the Alabama Highway Patrol. I can't take you to a Canadian court if you're in Louisiana. And if I'm from Medicine Hat, Alberta, and I'm kicking the crap out of somebody in Pittsburgh, and I go back home, there's not too much they can do about it either. This is a really bad situation. That's why they got to do it in the dark. If the people found out, they probably punched their lights out. The end of privacy, government to deploy laser-based molecular strip search devices across airports and roadside checkpoints. These things are supposed to, like, you know, sneak into your molecules from 50 meters away. The only thing is, you know, how true that is, I don't know, but when I looked at some of the devices' pictures or whatever, they look very non-technical and not very precise, so maybe this is just one of those bullshit stories to get you scared. You scared? You scared? You scared? Hidden portals between Earth and the Sun exist, say NASA. NASA-funded researcher and plasma physicist Jack Scudder, University of Iowa, claimed he has figured out a way on how to find them. We call them X-points or electron diffusion regions. Magnetic field of Earth connects to the magnetic field of the Sun, creating an uninterrupted path leading from our own planet to the Sun's atmosphere 93 million miles away. Now that's a sci-fi and a half. EU Parliament rejects ACTA anti-piracy treaty. Yay. Can't shoot a gun off in the air, that's illegal. But finally, some common sense came somewhere. Standing up for the right of free speech, especially from these Eurocrats. Shocking. Our own useless government officials would never contemplate that. U.S. Army builds artificial mysterious island in the Atlantic Ocean. The U.S. Armed Forces has increased the area of their country by 460 hectares. Never knew how heck an acre was. A regular acre's bad enough. Unique project to restore the land and deepen the seafloor of the Chesapeake Bay. Suspected presence of some insidious plans of U.S. government, perhaps. Chesapeake Bay is de facto part of the Atlantic Ocean between the states of Virginia and Maryland. First conquered by European colonists, Poplar Island was one of them. It diminished in size from 400 to not more than 10 hectares, and then they decided to restore it to 460. And of course, they cleaned the island from the indigenous population. That means they killed them all. Genocide. Shot them all down like dogs. Because they didn't have repeating rifles. They had spears and bows and arrows, so it was easier to kill them. So a Senate committee in 1996 started work on this. They spent up to, exceeded $660 million. I guess we really won't know how bad it is until it gets to $666 million. But there's that island out there. Apple pulls privacy watchdog app Clueful from its store. So you got this privacy watchdog on your iPhone that'll tell you who's peeking in on your account. Gone. U.S. government spies on us through Vimeo and YouTube. I guess that's why we had to go to this other one, because the guy just posted that video on YouTube. It was gone before he could say boo, and then we had to find it in an alternative site that maybe is a better thing. The Nokia Research Center developed complicated algorithms that can take clips from thousands of films and create a movie that is seamless and perfectly matched with an audio track, utilizing computers to collect and decipher information across the intelligence community. They can build almost anything. So we have IARPA, which is different than DARPA, IARPA, Office of Smart Collection, the Office of Incisive Analysis, the Office of Safe and Secure Operations, located at the University of Maryland Center for Advanced Study of Language. They are prepared. 3 former NSA employees expose illegal surveillance in court. Well, we know they're looking in our skivvies every day, every way, as often as they can. Russian Parliament approves the Internet censorship bill, so they're well in touch with the New World Order. And then one that's been going around is, where is Larry Page? He's been away from a lot of meetings. He's kind of disappeared. Hopefully he doesn't end up dead. Developers pull $1 billion from a desert ghost town in New Mexico. So not only are the Chinese building these mysterious cities, the Americans were set up to build a model $1 billion imaginary city. Very, very strange, very, very weird. Disgraced Mountie resigns. Yay, we got one. Corporal Benjamin Monty Robinson. Got drunk, was in a traffic accident, killed somebody, lied about it. But he was also the guy who tasered to death that Polish traveler at the airport many, many long years ago, Robert Jasinski, in October 2007. That one was okay. It's when you lied about your drinking. That got you in trouble. But the guy was just an evil man. Should never have been in uniform. They should have cleaned house of him back in 2007 for murdering that poor guy. That was an easy one to solve. But they wanted to test their tasers and make the guy squirm. Easy one to solve. But I said back then, and I say it today, you're at the airport, you got some guy speaking some kind of Slavic language, he's been left and ignored and brutalized to a degree for many long hours, and he's very angry. But one thing I can pretty much be rest assured of, you show up there with a good bottle of vodka, which you can get at the duty-free store, to stop in, you're the RCMP, right? Say, can I borrow that? It's an emergency. I got to commandeer this bottle. Sorry, we'll come back later and square accounts. And you go to see this guy with a couple of your buddies, and you just say, hey mister, Na zdrowie. Crank open the bottle, give him a little shot. He's going to calm down, relax, and realize you're friends. You know, come over, oh, my friend. You know, you get that big drunk hug. Everybody walks away happy. You find out, okay, he wasn't treated well at the airport. He was ignored, maligned, and you don't have to beat him up, and he doesn't have to break any furniture. A little bit of shot of vodka, he pays for what he broke, and everybody goes home happy. But that's not in the book, see, because Julian Fantino, our minister of, you know, former police commissioner, police chief, he can't think outside of some like fixed rule set or something. Come up with something totally, some total initiative. That's why I said a long time ago, what you need, you don't need a rule book, you don't need a rule for every equation, you need a brain. You go, okay, I got some guy who speaks Russian or something like that, and I can't understand a word he's saying, nobody can. He's a little angry, he wants to take the place apart. You know, how do I get him happy fast? Well, considering this guy was a drinker anyway, I'm surprised he couldn't figure that one out. Maybe he figured it out after he ran over whoever he killed on the road, and he went home and had a few extra so he couldn't get convicted of impaired driving. Physical harm. Drinking sugary drinks doesn't just pile on the pounds, it changes your body so it's harder to lose weight. That's why I drink Adam's Ale now. Water, H2O as much as possible, some juices. But these fizzy drinks, these pops, especially the colas, are poison for your body, flat out. Babylon, bruised, that's what they are. They rot out your teeth and weaken your bones and give you osteoporosis and stuff like that. But the sugar that you get from these drinks, your body decides to eat that and wait for that as opposed to burning fat in your body. And that's why you can never lose weight, even with these diet sodas and such like that. So it's just absolute poison. Don't do it. Don't do it. Say no. Say no to the New World Order. Let's play this video, Nullification. I hear this is a good one. We can get our world back.
Kentucky resolutions of 1798 are some of the great forgotten documents of U.S. history. They were written by James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, respectively, and they spelled out what cumulatively we know as the doctrine of nullification.
Songs as I write you this letter, days past and days yet to come.
Do you vote the bums out in the hopes that the new bums are going to say, you know, all this power that you've given us, we don't want it, you know, have it back? Well, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison both warned us that if the federal government ever became the sole and exclusive arbiter of the extent of its own powers, that power would always grow.
The federal government is not our boss.
We need to quit calling them federal laws. They are unconstitutional federal actions. They don't rise to the level of law.
I'm an absolute firm believer in the notion of 50 laboratories of innovation.
The Republicans and the conservatives have talked about the Constitution. You go to Lincoln Day dinners, it's about the Constitution this, restore the Constitution, you know, oath to the Constitution. But all of a sudden, when it was their president and his war, they didn't care about the Constitution anymore.
Don't ask for permission, don't wait for permission, they're never going to give it. Start doing what you know is right and true right in here.
Almost 5 years ago, 10th Amendment Center was started by some guy in his apartment. And in the last 2 years, we've built up an organization of 60 people in over half the states in the Union without any kind of funding whatsoever. This is a movement of the people, and we've been so effective in the nullification movement that we're now under direct attack by the likes of Rachel Maddow and the establishment elite.
But it's not just health reform. A conservative group called the 10th Amendment Center has been pushing a lot of the anti-health reform stuff. But they put that in the context of nullification, and they're pushing for other kinds of nullification, too.
When Nancy Pelosi was asked, you know, where do you derive the authority to regulate health care? Her response was, are you serious? Because now they presume that everything they do, they can do anything they want unless you can point to a particular provision in the Constitution or Bill of Rights that says they can't do that particular thing. So they flipped it on its head. Rather than a few like islands of power in a sea of rights, they presume a sea of power and little tiny islands of rights. So you have to go run to the Bill of Rights and see where they have a right to do something. If you do that, you're making a fundamental mistake.
The great pride of the South Carolina secessionists was this guy with the teen idol good looks, Senator John C. Calhoun, the beloved pro-slavery politician who was South Carolina's greatest political export at that time. He had been Vice President of the United States, Secretary of State, Secretary of War, and as well as being a rabid proponent of slavery, John Calhoun, to that end, championed the cause of nullification. Nullification, the idea that states could and should refuse to follow federal laws they didn't like, that they thought went beyond the powers of the federal government.
What was nullification used for? Well, was it used to oppress minorities when it was introduced? No, it was used to fight for free speech and free trade and against unconstitutional searches and seizures, against military conscription, against the fugitive slave laws. What has been the most lethal institution in history for minorities, if not the centralized modern government? I mean, it's modern state structure. I mean, you know, ask the Armenians in Turkey, or ask the Jews in Germany, or the Ukrainians in Russia, or the Asians in Uganda. I mean, the list just goes on and on of how large centralized states have oppressed people. States at any level can oppress people. They're states. But the more centralized it is, the easier it is for the powers that be to carry out these homicidal sorts of programs. And let's also remember, in U.S. history, I mean, the incarceration of the Japanese in the early 1940s, that wasn't a state program, that was a federal government program. The war on drugs, which has decimated minority communities, is that a state-level program? It's a federal program. But no progressive thinks this way, even though if they really believe in the human rights that they claim to stand for, they would say, let's nullify policies like that.
We're moving the argument from here to here to here, ever closer to where we ultimately want to get. 3 years ago, you never heard the word nullification. Now we're hearing it on major newspapers and major TV shows, so obviously we're having some impact.
It's going to be a tough road, because before we can have a lot of successes with it, we have to persuade, we have to change public opinion, we have to persuade people that what we're doing is legitimate, it's morally legitimate, constitutionally legitimate, historically legitimate, that, you know, what they've been taught in 7th grade really is untrue, that federal supremacy is the way it's all supposed to work. We have to challenge that version of events. And if people come to have a skepticism of that version of events and begin to see that our position has justice on its side, well, then once we've had this shift in public opinion, then I think we can expect some victories.
As God is my witness, I'll be a slave no more.
Fantastic. You just see a beautiful setup there with this this movie, this documentary on nullification, the rights of we the people and how they've been maligned. Quick thing that I'll point out before we head for the exits, where that woman Rachel was bemoaning them. That was a classic technique that you learn in the Lenin School of Political Warfare. So she talks about this Mr. Calhoun, that he was a slave owner, and finds the most unpopular, unflattering picture that you could possibly find of him. And, just says that because he is associated with nullification, that the whole idea is just terrible because he was a slave owner. Well, President Lincoln was a slave owner too. And, he wasn't probably the most handsome guy in the world either. So that really has nothing to do with anything. It's the Constitution, it's we the people, it's the fact that everything's been stolen from us, and nullification is a good, peaceful solution to rectify the problem once and for all. Because these party systems that we live in are horrible. They're owned by the elite rich. They're their slaves, and they're trying to make us their slaves as well. Not going to happen. We don't do this here. Anyway, what we do here is expose the truth as much as we can. We'll be on watch. We'll be waiting. Don't forget, August the 4th, we'll see if that crop circle comes true with the time of 7:40 something, whatever it was, to say that some big event will happen. Maybe some big event will happen. We don't know, but we're here. We're here to the end of time, as long as we can. We're here with your support. If you can give it to us, we appreciate it. We appreciate Aaron for hanging around and doing all this hard work, because he's a day man and this is a night show. We appreciate that channel, and we appreciate most of all you. So come back again, same that time, same that channel next week, Thursday, for another round of a few punches at the New World Order. Good night.
about the crime. No one looks behind the curtain, and no one questions why. The only time we got is right about now. I cross my heart, I take the vow, I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end. Tonight's the test, tonight's the time. I am the punishment that fits the crime. I'll break the bricks, I'll pick the locks. I don't got nothing, but I'll give what I got. I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end. Ten trials whose outcomes all fixed from the start. 9 judges sitting counting their money in the dark. 8 towers of iron surround the desert town. On a cold December morning, 7 martyrs knocked them down. 6 fathers still waiting for their 6 sons to come home.